Uplift. Do you ever feel like the odds are stacked against you? Like the challenge in front of you is just too big? If so, you're in good company. Let me tell you about a young woman who faced a challenge that could have cost her everything. Her name was Esther. Esther wasn't born into a life of power or of influence. She was just a simple Jewish girl living in Persia during the Babylonian captivity, and she was raised by her cousin Mordecai after losing her parents. But in a divine twist of events, Esther becomes queen of Persia. And just when it seemed like her story might settle into a fairy tale ending, the real challenge arrived. One of the king's high-ranking officials, Haman, plotted to destroy the Jewish people. And it was a time of crisis, and Esther was in a unique position to intervene. But by doing so, it meant risking her life, because in those days, the queen couldn't approach the king. Anybody couldn't approach the king without being summoned, or else they could risk death. So here comes Mordecai in his powerful words in Esther chapter 4, verse 14. He humbles Esther and puts things in perspective. He tells her that God's going to use someone to deliver his people. Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Mordecai reminded Esther that the position she was in wasn't just a coincidence, that God had placed her where she was for a reason. And what strikes me about Esther is her courage and her faithfulness. After hearing Mordecai's words, she didn't just jump into action, but she called a fast and asked her people to fast and pray with her for 3 days. And then, with faith in God's providence, she went before the king saying, "If I perish, I perish." And what happened next, as the story goes, God worked through Esther's bravery to save her people. The plot was exposed, Haman was defeated, and the Jews were delivered. And here's what I love about this story. It reminds me that the courage that we have isn't in the absence of fear, but it's choosing to act despite the fear. Esther didn't know how things would turn out, but she trusted that God had a plan, even if she couldn't see the whole picture. So like Esther, we all face moments when we're called to take a stand. We're called to step out in faith sometimes, and maybe it's standing up for what's right. Maybe it's sharing your faith with someone else. Maybe it's making a decision that feels risky, but that aligns with God's will. In those moments, remember that God places us where we are for a reason. Joshua 1:9 reminds us, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." And so today, ask yourself, what might God be calling you to do for such a time as this? It might feel scary, but with God, your courage can make an eternal difference. Have faith, be bold, and as always, go lift somebody up.